Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Lowell Ponte, he's been on the program before. He's good friends with Craig Smith, one of the leading economists out there who's with Swiss America. And Lowell is a great commentator on what's happening on the business and economic front and has written several books on what's happening in the economy. He's asking the question, will deceptive growth numbers bamboozle the United States? For the first time since the Obama administration started, unemployment now at 7.5%. There seems to be this funky new weird new normal out there. I always believe that the American resilience and entrepreneur attitude is such that, you know what, we'll figure out how to adjust. But boy, if 7.5% becomes good going forward, God help us all. And then there's the fact that our national debt is now greater than our gross domestic product, which historically, internationally, when it begins to equal each other, you're lucky to get more than 1% GDP growth annually. And the silent decade for Japan began almost the exact year that GDP and the debt equaled each other. And so I don't know. I think things look pretty dire for the U.S. going forward. And Lowell, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin. A great, cheery introduction. Yeah, we're living in what...
Cheery introduction. Yeah, that's right. I need a box of Kleenex over here. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, we're living in what Mortimer Zuckerman calls the grand illusion phase of the current recession we're living in. Business is adjusting. It's adjusting by using fewer and fewer workers. And so we now have not only high unemployment, we not only have the lowest percentage of working-age Americans actually working that we've seen in more than 30 years, but we've seen about 40% of the unemployed as long-term unemployed. In other words, these are people who most of them are never going to be hired again.
Yeah, only 60% are still looking for jobs. So that, so in other words, the inversion of your figure of 40% who are long-term unemployed, only 60%. That's the lowest number of people still looking for jobs since the Great Depression.
Meanwhile, you talk about growth, GDP. As a Harvard economist Martin Feldstein pointed out, they're now claiming we have 2.5% GDP in the last quarter. Trouble is, more than half of that was just companies acquiring inventory that they're not selling. And what that means is real growth is only about 1.2%. Household income, meanwhile, in the last quarter fell by 5.3%. We're getting poorer. People have fewer hours of work. We now have a system where if you work 1 hour a month, you can be counted as employed. But if you stop working looking for 4 weeks, you're no longer counted as anything. You just fall out of the system. And that is why we have better and better rates of unemployment as fewer and fewer people actually have jobs. As I would say jokingly, if we get to a point where nobody has any jobs and hence nobody's looking for work, the government will then say unemployment is zero.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the government to come up with ways other than your basic food stamps and housing type programs out there that functions like unemployment compensation, but they don't get recorded for unemployment compensation purposes. Because if you use the 1935 model for unemployment in America, if you use the exact same model, real unemployment in the United States is actually around 17%.
Well, actually, Shadow Stats and John Williams, who uses the old methods of calculation, says if you use the way we calculated numbers in the 1920s, or 1930s, I should say, during the Depression, unemployment could be as high as 25%.
Yep. I heard Congressman Duncan Hunter use a 17% number recently. But yeah,
the point is
that unemployment is really high.
why they use gross domestic product is that lets them count government spending as if it were productivity. And government spending accounts for 39%, federal, state, and local, of our whole GDP. So, I mean, a huge chunk of the economy is just government. And where does government get its money to spend? It gets it from you and me. In other words, it gets it by sucking it out of the productive sector. So today we have twice as many people who work for government as work in all of manufacturing combined. And as to manufacturing, they just put out new job numbers last Friday. The new job number shows zero growth in jobs in manufacturing and actually negative 6% job growth, which is to say jobs are shrinking in construction. So what we're seeing is an increase in hamburger flipper jobs, in waitress jobs, things like that. And we're seeing a government that is pressing people to say you're going to pay even higher taxes and penalties under Obamacare if you have too many full-time employees. So what do people do? They have fewer full-time employees and more part-time employees. Back during Bill Clinton's era, there was a fascinating cartoon. Bill Clinton was giving a speech saying, and under my administration, we've gained 20 million jobs. And behind him is standing a waiter at this banquet. And above the waiter, you have one of those idea bubbles, what he's thinking. And he's thinking, yeah, and I've got 4 of those jobs.
Yeah.
I remember that. We're going to a part-time economy of Americans who rent. They don't own their own home anymore because when you don't have a full-time job, you don't qualify for a home loan.
That's right. And by the way, we're going to even see a lot more of that. Obamacare is going to absolutely force more and more employers to do this. And that's what I don't think that, Obama never quite understands. These liberals, these utopians never quite understand is that entrepreneurs, like Thomas Sowell said, people are not trees. You come at a person with an axe, he is either going to fight or flight. And things like part-time employment rather than full-time employment in order to keep costs in order, that's just what employers are going to have to do in order to stay in business.
So, Kevin, I do have one piece of good news today. For 1,000 of your listeners, we'd be happy to give you Craig Smith's and my new book, The Great Debasement, The 100-Year Dying of the Dollar and How to Get America's Money Back. It's a 283-page book. Craig and I are just on a mission from God to try to arm people with information so they can protect themselves against all the con games government is playing on us, taxing you by inflation and so on. We'd be happy to give 1,000 people post-paid one of these books. Will not cost you a penny, and it could save your life savings.
Awesome.
So
well,
all you need to do to get a free book is call a toll-free number, 800-630-1494. That's 1-800-630-1494. As I like to say, it's a little like Columbus, but it isn't quite 1492. It's 800-630-1494. And at our expense, we'll send you the book. Craig doesn't need the money. And we're just trying to arm people with information to try to save the republic and get back in the direction of sane money, real money here.
Yeah, I don't understand why our side don't call inflation a monetary tax, because that's exactly what it is. Why don't we just call it a monetary tax?
Well, because they want to conceal the fact that it's a tax. The whole beauty of using inflation is you not only get to tax people without their knowing it, they just stand there saying, why are the prices going up? Well, they're going up because government is printing more than $1 trillion a year out of thin air. The government spends the money, and by the time the money gets down to you, it's worth a heck of a lot less.
Yeah, I don't understand why our side. I would love to hear Craig, who's been on this show before, saying on radio, essentially it is a monetary tax. It taxes the value of all of your money. And I think people can get that rather than inflation, which thanks to poor economics teaching in classrooms, equals high prices. That isn't inflation. Inflation's too much money chasing too few goods. And people don't understand it. It is a tax on our monetary system.
Well, thank God you educate people. But, of course, now we live in a crisisocracy where they try to treat us...
Crisisocracy. I love it. I'm going to use that one. That's good.
Yeah, remember how Native Americans learned how instead of risking their lives hunting buffalo one by one, all they had to do was stampede them over a cliff. Well, there now is a government effort to stampede us out of savings, out of gold, out of any safe haven where they can't trap us in this world of investing in the stock market and so on. And this, by the way, is why the stock market is going up when everything else is sliding downward. The stock market goes up every time there's bad news. That means the Fed is going to keep printing money. They're going to keep the casino open. They're going to keep the champagne flowing. They're going to keep the economy addicted to this funny government money.
Hey, Lowell, we ran out of time about 10 seconds ago, but fortunately you're still on the air. That won't be the case in around 20 seconds. Thanks for being with us. Lowell Ponte, always exciting, lots of energy, telling us about what the government is doing to you rather than for us. Thanks, my friend.
Hey, God bless.
You too. When we come back, more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there, usdailyreview.com. You're listening to The Price of Business.